breathe, everybody. The Montreal Canadiens finally break their 5-game losing skid by beating the Toronto Maple Leafs of all teams by a score of 5-2 at the Bell Center tonight. And a second period for the ages. Let's talk some puck. Hey everybody, Kosta here for PuckTalk Montreal on this November 22nd, a cool Saturday night in Montreal where the Montreal Canadiens come away with a 5-2 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs at the Bell Center. And you know what? It was a little unexpected, but the Canadiens came out and absolutely dominated, I would say, 2 periods of this hockey game. Not so much in the third. We'll talk about that as we look at the highlights brought to you by InstaCustoms. InstaCustoms.com is Canada's highest rated print shop with over 3,000 Google reviews and a 4.9 star rating. They offer direct-to-garment printing on all your favorite clothing, along with coffee and travel mugs, and they even offer embroidery. Habs won a Stanley Cup? You can win too on Stanley Street at InstaCustoms.com. Now, well, the Canadiens actually got outshot in the first period by the slimmest of margins, 11-9 by the Toronto Maple Leafs. At 12-11 of the first, a pretty passing play, and that was the theme of the night between Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Lane Hutson led to the Montreal Canadiens' first goal. You'll see Caulfield brings the puck across the line, waits, delays, gives it to Suzuki. Suzuki, great cross-ice pass over to Hutson to make it 1-0 Montreal. Here it is again, patience. Let the D put themselves out of position, cross-ice, boom. Of course, Gallagher wreaking havoc in front of the net, drawing attention to himself, opening up the lane so Hutson could score that goal on the back door to make it 1-0 Montreal. It's the first time the Canadiens have had a lead in a hockey game in quite some time. So that was measure number 1 of relief when it came to this hockey game. Measure number 2 was the second goal scored a minute and 22 seconds later by Noah Dobson. Again, nice passing, not as pretty as the first goal, but still a good play by Mike Matheson as he gets a pass from, I believe it was Demidov, and he turns, plays it back to the point, Clobber scores, and there you have it. Again, here we go. Demidov to Matheson. Matheson turns. Back, one-timer by Dobson, a bullet with traffic in front. Slafkovsky right in Joseph Woll's face, makes it 2-0, and that's how it went after the first period of play. Like I said, shots on goal, 11-9. Not much as far as a margin for the Leafs, but the Canadiens really dominated that period. Then came the second period, where it was all Habs all day. And there were delayed penalties where the Canadiens maintained possession of the puck for almost a minute and a half in the Leafs zone. It was crazy. And not on just one occasion, 2. And that part of that led to Noah Dobson's goal at 4:09 of the second period. Again, a beautiful passing play between Slafkovsky, Demidov, and finally Dobson to clap it past Joseph Woll, who was way out of position. Here it is as Slafkovsky brings it across the line. He'll delay, wait for the guys to get into position. Demidov goes down low. Look at Dobson. Aggressive, has room, knows he has it, nobody covering him, and absolutely bombs it. Here it is again. Watch Dobson on the left. Bang! Wide open net as it looked like Joseph Woll was expecting the one-timer from Demidov. He didn't get that. Demidov, premeditated, knew he was passing the puck right back to Dobson because he saw him, and Dobson just absolutely dropped a howitzer to make it 3-0 for Montreal. It wasn't done there. We all know the Florian Xhekaj got his NHL debut tonight in this hockey game. And he got on the scoreboard in a couple of ways, starting with this one as he assisted on Josh Anderson's goal. And this was all Anderson, but if you watch, here's Florian, plays the puck in behind the net to Anderson, and Anderson comes out from behind the net and roofs it over the shoulder of Woll to make it 4-0 Montreal. Here it is again. Anderson out from behind the net, roofs it 4-0. And that's where it stood until the 17-19 mark of the second period, where Oliver Ekman-Larsson sends a bomb on net, breaking the shutout bid for Jakub Dobeš. Here it is as the puck comes back to him, and he just absolutely lets one go. Traffic in front, Tavares creating a screen, not allowing Dobish to come out. He took a little bit of time to track that puck. No fault of his own, given the screen in front of him. And that made it 4-1 after 40 minutes. Montreal was dominating. That one goal, a blip on the radar when it came to the Leafs because it was the only offense they were able to muster in that second period. But then, in the third, I don't know what happened, but the Montreal Canadiens just absolutely shut it down. While they were pushing offensively, they had the Leafs on their heels, and they just couldn't maintain it. What happened? Well, with about, 5:34 left in the third period, Mermis, defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, decides to pick a fight with Florian Xhekaj. And let's just say he got his butt handed to him. The uppercuts from Xhekaj absolutely bloodied Mermis. Big brother on the bench, super happy for his brother. And, of course, Florian, as usual, screaming as he goes to the penalty box. His first game, first assist, first official NHL fight. What more could you ask for? Not only that, and we'll talk about more of it in a second, but he ended up being the third star of the hockey game, which was great. But on that play, they decided to give a slashing penalty to Florian Xhekaj. He never slashed anybody. In fact, Mermis threw the first punch and should have been called for an instigator, but he wasn't. Instead, the Leafs went on the power play, and just a few seconds in, it was William Nylander having room from the blue line with the extra man, empty net as well. So it's 6-on-4. He steps in, rips it, as you can see. Big screen in front of Dobish again, taking his eyes away, can't see the puck. And there it is to make it 4-2. And then Josh Anderson adds an empty netter later on with just over 2 minutes left to play. And that sealed the deal for the Montreal Canadiens. A 5-2 win. Now let's analyze the game like we normally do. And for that, cheapesttshirts.ca. Cheapesttshirts.ca has men's, women's, and children's t-shirts, all sizes, hoodies too. With over 1,000 products to choose from, anything you need for merchandise or the best deals on everyday clothing, cheapesttshirts.ca is your go-to source. Buy today, ship tomorrow, cheapesttshirts.ca. Now, Jakub Dobish was good. Let's talk about the goaltending to start because of the fact that it's been so bad. But again, on both goals, I found he was a little too far back. Yes, he was trying to work around the screen, but if you come out a little bit further and be aggressive, even if you're standing at the top of the crease, you're bigger. And the pucks tend to hit you a little bit more. Granted, the Ekman-Larsson shot beat him low over the glove and above the pad, and the shot that came in from William Nylander, once again, to the blocker's side, big screen in front of him, but he was a little bit too far back in his crease. It's something that we see that's a trend between the two goaltenders. Now, as I do my series called The Art of the Save, I'm going to differentiate between the two goaltenders because Dobish is a little bit more aggressive in his crease. Not quite overly aggressive, but he tends to play more at the top of his crease. Recently, though, given his lack of success, he's been a little bit less aggressive. I don't agree with that. I think he needs to continue to be at the top of his crease so that he has better angles on shots that are coming in on him. That said, I was pretty happy with his performance because he made some good saves in this hockey game to quell a lot of the offense that the Toronto Maple Leafs threw his way. But the biggest part of this game, the most important part of this game, was the second period, where we saw passing by the Montreal Canadiens that we hadn't seen in this city, I would say, since the 1970s. It was a clinic. Quick passes, not allowing the Leafs to get to the puck, especially when they had delayed penalties. Because the Canadiens, for over 3 minutes, just about there, dominated with a delayed penalty in the Toronto Maple Leafs zone. 6 skaters on the ice, Dobish having gone to the bench, and the Canadiens were just moving the puck around, getting shots away, not allowing the Leafs to get possession, getting the puck back, and starting over again. It was beautiful. And then, while the power plays didn't actually score any goals, they did manage to get a lot of shots on goal in that second period, including on the power play. So, you look at it as a whole, yes, you want to see the power play score a little bit more, but the passing clinic, including the goal, the second goal that Noah Dobson scored, including the Josh Anderson goal, because the passing actually led to all of it, not just the forecheck. It was beautiful. It's the type of hockey you want to see from a team that's got speed. Granted, the Leafs decimated by injury. No Chris Tanev. They lost, what's his name again? They lost McCabe earlier in the period as he took a shot to the face. Well, it wasn't a shot, but a puck rolled up his stick and hit him in the face. He was gone for the rest of the night. So they were down to 5 defensemen. So, yeah, the Canadiens took full advantage of the fact that the Leafs defense was missing a guy, and they were really tired on that ice. Tanev not there, so, your best components are just not on the ice for the Leafs. In fact, Mermis was only in his 3rd game with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Or was it, what's the other guy's name? Is it Schechter, I believe? He was in his 3rd game with the Leafs. So, the Leafs were really, really weak on the back end. And the Canadiens, to their credit, in the first 2 periods, took advantage of it. The one thing I didn't like, though, is that the Canadiens went into a little bit of a defensive shell in the 3rd. Only 3 shots on goal. And I'm of the mind that if something's working through 2 periods, why the hell are you stopping? You should be working harder. You should continue to attack. You had the Leafs on the ropes. The same way you watched the Washington Capitals do that to you the other night, you should have kept the pedal to the metal. You should have kept pushing the offense. Instead, the Canadiens backed off, not getting a lot of shots on goal, allowing the Leafs a little bit of hope to get back into this hockey game. It wasn't much. They made it 4-2 with just under 5 minutes left to play. But still, you don't want to give them the opportunity. The Leafs outshot the Canadiens in the 3rd period by a 9-3 margin. Why? Because the Canadiens decided to back off. And I don't agree with that. If you're dominating for 2 freaking periods, then continue to dominate. Despite the fact that the Canadiens won this hockey game, okay, which is great news for the team, great news for the players, takes the monkey off their back because they've got a long road trip coming up out west. It's what you want to see. But ultimately, as a habit, you don't want to see them back off. Even in a game where they're up by 3, you want to keep seeing them push. It ended up being up by 2, then the empty netter, which is great. Fine, the Canadiens got their insurance with 2:10 left, and everything was fine and dandy. But man, oh man, I can never understand why teams back off like that. And I can't really pinpoint whether this is a Marty St. Louis thing or whether it's just a player's mentality, right? Because after all, Marty is an offensive guy. I don't really see him saying, okay, guys, take it up the rear for the 3rd period. Don't defend until the end of the game. Don't let them get into the zone. I really don't understand that mentality, and I don't think that comes from the coaching staff. I think it's the players, and I think it's habit. And so it's a habit that you need to break, because when you're so dominant for 40 minutes, it doesn't make any sense to change the way you're playing. And they did that, and they allowed the Leafs hope. They allowed the Leafs to get shots on goal. The Leafs hit a goal post in the 3rd period as well. It could have been a much different game if that puck went in. So you want to stop giving opportunity to the opposition and maintain that pressure that's giving you success for 40 minutes. Just a small blip on the radar for the Canadiens tonight. But one thing they did do very well in the first 40 minutes was they forechecked the Toronto Maple Leafs defense to death. The Leafs defense, not very fleet of foot, right? Even when they had Tanev in there and McCabe, they don't skate very well. The one thing that is missing on the Leafs defense is a defenseman that can move laterally. And we know on the Canadian side of things, it's something they absolutely want in their defensemen. Their ability to move laterally so that they can defend better, especially because they play a man-to-man system. When you look at the Leafs, they play box plus one because their guys just can't move. It's like their feet are in cement. You watch them as the Canadiens in that 2nd period absolutely dominated, and the defense were just turning their heads and had no idea which direction to go in. That's what the Canadiens did extremely well. They put the pucks in deep. They would come in on the forecheck, whether it was Anderson, Gallagher, Kapanen. All of them came in. Veleno coming in, finishing their body checks. Even Jake Evans, who took a huge shot from Tom Wilson, still looked good tonight. So no ill effects, which is great news for the Canadiens. But even then, that part of the game, once again, in the 3rd, gone. But that pressure on the D is what created all the offense for the Canadiens tonight, because the defense on the Toronto Maple Leafs side had no answer for the Canadiens' aggressivity. So when you see that and you know a team is hurting, and there are a lot of them currently hurting in the National Hockey League, right? There's a lot of teams that are injured. Well, what happens? Well, you take advantage of it no matter what. Advanced scouting tells you, you know what, coach? The defense on the other side, they're hurting. They don't have a lot of depth there. If we pressure them, we'll have success. Oh, well, there's your game plan, part of it anyway. And then the other part, move the puck quick. And we know, as I mentioned, the Habs did that beautifully in the first and second period. Of course, a couple things we got to talk about too. As I mentioned, Florian Xhekaj getting his first point in the National Hockey League, assisting on Josh Anderson's goal, and then his first fight where he absolutely bloodied Mermis. I mean, I don't know what Mermis was thinking, picking a fight with Xhekaj, and he's throwing the first punch, and he had his glove on when he did it, which is a no-no. But you saw Xhekaj coming over the top with shots and hitting him, and then he changed the angle because he could hit him up top and then came in underneath, and those underneath uppercuts are what bloodied Mermis up big time because he hit him with at least 3 clean uppercuts. And that's what you want to see from a young kid like Florian. He comes in, he lays the body, and you're talking about a kid too that didn't get a lot of ice time because during that second period, the Canadiens dominated so much, he couldn't really get out onto the ice. You're talking about, 9 minutes where the Canadiens had a man advantage in that period. That includes the time on delayed penalties. Where do you want Xhekaj to get in? You don't blame Marty St. Louis for that because Xhekaj, after all, was on that fourth line. But in the time that he was on the ice, he took full advantage of his opportunity. Short of scoring a goal, what more do you want from a kid that comes up? He brought more to the table than Josh Roy did, that's for sure. And so now that he's actually put that effort forward, is it time to send Joshua Roy back down, possibly bringing somebody else back up, or saving a little money on the salary cap? They're going out west. The Canadiens may want to keep an extra player with them, so I don't foresee Roy not going on the trip. And I also think the Canadiens will bring up Del Gaizo so that he can go on the trip in case of an injury, right? But overall, man, I so impressed with Florian Xhekaj. And I get that in the preseason, he really impressed a lot of people, but he still needed to work on his defensive game. Tonight, it showed that he did because he was really good in his own zone, was responsible, and that translated into offense for the Montreal Canadiens, which is great. And you want to see that continued success. The one thing that he needs to do that the Canadiens have asked Arbor to do as well is pick your spots, right, when it comes to fighting. In this case, he didn't really have a choice because Mermis punched him in the face. Anybody gets punched in the grill, I'm sorry, I'm dropping my gloves, I'm taking you on. That's pretty much how the rule is, right? And those are the type of fights I love. Not staged, just in the heat of the moment. And they're beautiful. They're the epitome of what hockey was back in the day, right? Guys didn't get ready to fight and like off the whistle, they drop their gloves, pull up their sleeves, throw off their elbow pads. No. They're there, they're battling in the corner, they're going at it. Oh, you know what? You pissed me off. Here's a cross check, here's another one. There go the gloves, here we go. That's what this was. The unstaged, pure. For a hockey purist, anybody out there, this fight is something that you enjoyed. Not just because Xhekaj won it, but because it was a pure battle between two Goliaths, right? Obviously, Mermis getting the short end of the stick, but still. The stage stuff I can do without. This was great. And the other thing, too, at the end of the game, here's something that I really want the referees and the league to look at because it irked me. Not because it was Arbor Xhekaj, but at the end of the game, Xhekaj is backing off with the puck to kill the time off. You've already lost the game. You're down by 3. So he's backing into his own zone, turns his back to the boards, and what happens? Dakota Joshua decides to come in and lay a cheap shot on him. Not very hard, but enough to try to get Xhekaj's attention. And Xhekaj wanted to go, right? Because it's unnecessary. Why the hell would you do that? And so the league needs to look at those things because if you're going to penalize players for hitting guys at the end of icings, right, is unjustified, or late hits, what do you call this? To me, this is instigation at its finest, right? Even if somebody like Xhekaj would do that to the other team, I'd call bullshit on it. You don't do it, right? The game's over. You're done. What more do you want? After 60 minutes, you've lost? What are you trying to set up? The game on December 6th? It's already there. right? The Canadiens are playing the Leafs again in a couple of weeks. And it's going to depend on how healthy the Leafs get as to what kind of a game it's going to be. It's not about Dakota Joshua. There's already animosity there. Mermis had his face rearranged. Nothing more than that. And earlier in the game, Xhekaj wanted to go with Joshua, and Joshua had said no. So what does that tell you? You're going to pick your spots like that and you're going to be a wimp? You do it in the heat of battle, and you do it early if you're going to be Joshua next game. Don't be a wimp. Get in there, fight. Okay? You want to set a tone? Throw a big body check on Xhekaj, drop your gloves, and go. Not off a face-off. That being said, I wish Xhekaj Arbor would have beat the living pulp out of him because I thought Joshua deserved it, but that didn't happen. So, what happens now? Well, tomorrow, I'll bring you another installment of The Art of the Save. Plus, we'll take a look at the week in review, right? Look back at the losses, look back at the win. What changed? Because things were different for the Montreal Canadiens tonight. They look like a completely different team. They look like a team that was full confidence, despite the fact that they came out and they lost 5 games prior to that. They look like a team on a mission. And that mission was 2 points or bust. So how do you continue that trend? And the trip next week is going to be tough because you're going through Utah, Vegas, and who's the third team? Colorado. Those 3 teams next week. It's going to be tough. And we'll take a look forward. The Art of the Save, of course, tomorrow, we talk about angles and how those need to be of a certain ilk when it comes to goaltending. Second part of this series. If you missed the first part, go back and take a look at it. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell to get the latest and greatest. And please tell your friends about the show. Word of mouth, after all, there's no better way to move something forward. Thanks again to our sponsors, instacustoms.com and cheapesttshirts.ca. We'll be back tomorrow, once again, with not only The Art of the Save, Episode 2, but our week in review.